Start recording. I'm also broadcasting through WebEx if you want to log into that. Let me rephrase that. I'm broadcasting through WebEx. You want to log into that. So what we're looking at today is, why is that not? Oh, okay. So what we're looking at today is, you're probably getting this as well. If you open the Epic Games Launcher, the first thing it's going to do is tell you you need to log in. So go ahead and create an account if you haven't already, because we're going to need to do that. But you'll see up here at the top where it says not installed. For me, I was able to get that to work just by closing this and launching it again. And there we go. And so now it's going to let us run this. So we talked last class period about getting together a proxy set of animations. So I have Maya open. I'm going to go ahead and open mine up. File, open scene. I'll go ahead and set my project to the location I put them. I actually move them to my D drive. Game rigs. I think I'm using the body. Am I using the body mechanics rigs? I think so. And yeah, that is curvy female CharAnim001. Don't save. Okay, so this is what I have. The other thing, before we can kind of really get started, I made a video in between last class and this class on how to test out some rigs. Any of you able to test out some rigs and see if they worked? Okay. So the ones we have up there under the game rigs folder, you're welcome to use all of those. But hopefully you were able to find a rig, and hopefully you were able to get a scene similar to what I have here that has these 4 animations in them. If you haven't, you may as well not have even shown up today, because we're going to be walking through this together, right? So I would say take a few minutes to get something together so you have something to export. Because what we're going to do is work on getting all of these in there. Again, they can look like absolute garbage. You just need to be able to see that when you hit a button in Unreal, like something happened and it was the thing you wanted to happen, right? So it could be like quickly make a couple of keyframes, like for your jump or for your punch, or you could literally just have your character do like that, right? Like just a couple of keyframes so you have those in there and you can see them. Yeah.
Oh, is it okay if we just have an animation for it now, just export it?
No, you don't. If you only have one, I just take a couple minutes and get something together so you have all of those pieces, because this is the only lecture I do where I walk you through every step of it. I will say I'm recording it. There's already a video version of it out there, but you need to, this is going to be a very procedural thing. Like we do one step, and it's going to mess up for half of you, so I help you fix it. And then we do another step, and it's going to mess up for half of you, and I help you fix it. And then we do another step, and then it repeats like that for about 3 hours. So you may want to get some water or something. I guess it's going to be a long day. I tell you all this because, really, this is the part that if I don't make us do this today, because I've taught this class before, people will put it off until 15 minutes before the project's due, and then they'll get a 0 because it's not something you can do in 15 minutes. But if we do it today, that means the rest of this project you just get to focus on the animation part, right? And so it will work. But I know for a lot of you we're opening up something completely new, so you just need an animation for each of those stubs, right? If you're needing to remember again which ones those are, it's File. I go to my game exporter, and we have this. Right? So again, these are the sets we need. You don't necessarily need the bind pose or jump all. I just kind of made those so I could see those sections. So I can actually delete those. Really, that is our actual list. We need an idle, a punch, a run, jump up, jump loop, and jump down. While people are kind of throwing some of that stuff together, if you're kind of last minute, if not, go ahead and open it up. I'm going to talk briefly about that video I made and sent out to you all about how to test a rig. So this is a really handy tool. It would have been installed on this image, except for we didn't get this image installed in time. So if you go up to the Greg Marlowe, or the DIGM classes folder, Greg, character animation, resources, I actually have already downloaded the FBX review file, like installation file for you. I would go ahead and advise you just install it as well. So if you didn't get a chance to watch the video, or you didn't feel like you needed to test out a rig, you were just planning on using one of the ones we're using. What this is for is basically an FBX file doesn't have a home, right? An FBX file is a transfer file. It's a way of sending something from one program to another program. It will contain mesh data. Sometimes it will contain some material data. It will contain data about a skeleton and the way that skeleton is skinned to a mesh. And it can contain animation data on that skeleton. Not necessarily on the mesh, but on the skeleton, right? So an FBX file can be used to send a model and some animation from Maya to 3D Studio Max or Softimage XSI, or probably, I would assume, even stuff like Houdini or Cinema 4D. And vice versa, you can swap them back and forth. Some of you have probably used FBX files to send stuff from like Mudbox to Maya or ZBrush to Maya. It's sort of the more common transfer file for that kind of data anymore. So almost any game engine you're going to be using will recognize an FBX format. A while back, different game engines had proprietary exporters. Everybody pretty much just started using FBX. So if you're using Unreal, if you're using Unity, if you're using anything else, you're probably exporting out to an FBX file. And so what this folder, what this installation thing is a way to view that FBX file, okay? So an FBX file isn't like a native file to any other program. It originally started, I think, with like Motion Builder. But like none of your programs are going to like default open up an FBX, right? This is a program that will. And the reason that's beneficial is because it is a transfer file, right? Sometimes you export incorrectly, sometimes you import incorrectly. This is just going to open the thing you export to let you know whether you exported it correctly or not. And so when working inside of Unreal, that's actually pretty beneficial because you don't always know if that file is messed up because you imported it incorrectly or because you exported it incorrectly. This will help you answer that question. Right? So if I double click on this, it'll just go ahead and install it on my computer. Go ahead and run that. And the cool thing is it will just associate itself with the FBX files. Probably should have downloaded this before I did it. Accept, next, next. Finish. Okay. Okay, so now that's going to open up any FBX file we have. And that's a really handy tool because it's kind of like a way of testing the thing you exported, right? The reason for that is because all of the rigs, all of the controls, all of the constraints, all of that stuff, right? Maya's going to throw that away and export out just the bone data and the mesh data, right? And so when you export it out, you can immediately open it up in the FBX review and say, did that work and does that look correct, right? And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to install that. This is kind of our viewer. This is the way we test our exports, okay? Okay. So just a kind of brief overview of the thing that we covered, or the thing I covered in that video I sent out. the way we're going to find out if something is game ready is usually in your outliner here. So in your outliner, we should have a couple of different things. We should have, for my character, I have this mod folder. And so all of these pieces of mesh, those are my model, right? All of those combined make up the model. Under the TSMG rig folder, we're going to start to find different elements for our rig, right? So like that's our root control. That's that thing right there, right? And then here's all these IK controls. Well, for us, I don't actually even know what he's using this word for, but TSMG cruft, that word right there, if we hit plus on that, this very top thing we see here is the TSMG world joint. Now the way we can tell if a character is going to work in a game is that all of the deformations on your character need to be driven by that single chain of joints right there. So if I hold down shift and hit that plus, you'll see that it's just a long string of joints, right? They go all the way. Everything that my model is skinned to is in that hierarchy.
Is that because that way the game engine only has to keep up that one joint?
Well, it's because the game engine may not recognize the way you would connect it otherwise. Okay. It recognizes a parent hierarchy. It may not recognize a orient constraint from Maya. Or it may not recognize it. Maybe you're controlling it with a script or something like that. Yeah. So a direct connection and a hierarchy is how it is pretty much understandable by like Notepad. Like anything can kind of understand that. Yes.
I assume it would also need a roll joint.
Sorry, what?
I assume it would also need a roll joint for at least most game engines.
So most roll, yeah. So that's a good point. If you want to turn on your joint so you can see this, that world joint that I have selected is a little confusing because it looks like she has like a joint coming out of her body on some level, right? Like there's this thing that's on the ground that and it's like, the funny thing about that is that's not actually skinned to anything, right? That joint doesn't drive anything. What that joint does, the reason that is there, is to always tell the game engine or Maya where the origin of this character is, right? Because in theory, I could start animating this character, right, from way over here, right? But you see that always stays at our origin. That is going to be the origin point of our character when we import it in, right? It's sometimes a little confusing to people when they first start animating on a game character, and they're like, why is that on the floor? What is happening? Did I break my rig? That's normal. But the cool thing about this is, like, if my animation were a cinematic, right, and I wanted my character to seem like they were sneaking, right, and then they stop, and then they turn around in a circle, and then they start sneaking again, like, all I really need to have that transform perfectly is to animate it like that in Maya and have that world joint stay at the origin, right? I bring that in, and then the character just walks away from their origin point in Unreal, right? The other thing, though, is like when we have our run cycle, right? We have this run animation we have here. Oh, let's play back speed real time. Oh, I completely forgot something. Oh, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. Do y'all see what I forgot? You didn't see. So anyway, the reason this is interesting is because the way the game engine is going to control this run cycle and make our character run around is it's going to grab this joint and just move it around, right? And once we get this in Unreal where there's no other constraints around it, that's going to function pretty much like my character running around like this, right? It's going to let our character, instead of run in place, we're going to be able to take that world joint and drive it wherever we want to, and it will drive our character around the scene. So the mistake I made was last class period. And I'm going to fix it now, but you made it 2 because I didn't tell you to change it. When I hit play, we're watching our animation playback, right? How many frames a second is this?
24. Oh,
It's 24 frames a second, right? So something, and this is all right. This is cool that I made this mistake because that way we can talk about how to fix it. 24 frames a second is film. Right? That's what Maya defaults to because Maya is mainly used for film. Well, Maya was built to be used for film animation. If I were making something for TV, how many frames per second does it need to be? 29.97, 30 is fine, and it just rounds it off. For video games are always in a multiple of 30. And so I animated this at 20 frames per second, which means that whatever I export out when I put it in Unreal, it's going to be playing too fast, right? Because it's going to play back this animation at 30 frames per second. So that's okay. Like, there's actually a pretty easy solution to this, right? I'm going to extend this out so I can just see my entire timeline. I'll go ahead and extend this to, let's say, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my settings and preferences, this little thing down here in the bottom, and under my frame rate right here, I'm going to change that from 24 to 30. Now, here's what's going to happen when I do that. It's going to shift all of my keyframes to keep my timing the same, right? It's going to kind of convert all of those frames, which means all of those times I set up in my game exporter are going to be incorrect now, I think. It may adjust them for me. I hope it adjusts them for me. Let's see what happens. But if I click on this on 30, I'll point out, like, 30 isn't always accurate either, because a lot of games will play back at 60, and then if you're playing like, let's say like a VR game, like, you're definitely going to have to play at 60 or it's going to get jittery because you have to do 30 for each eye. But more than likely, they may even go higher than that. They may be trying to do 120. Right? The thing you'll notice about that is all those are divisible by 30. Right? A game engine kind of defaults to that 30 frames per second base. Right? And so anything we export out is going to play back inside of Unreal at 30 frames a second. So when I hit OK, let's see, keep keys. If I were to check keep keys at current frame, it would mess everything up. It would basically keep them on those frames, and everything would play too fast. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like this and hit save. And did that change it? I didn't set that. Yeah, I think that shifted everything around. Okay, so now I'm able to sort of see where everything went. And I can shift these back and change them, but I'm going to do a minute here just to fix this on my timeline. So sorry about this. This was my fault. Frame 1. First things first, I want to select everything. All of the controls. Highlight everything. Right-click. And say snap, just to make sure everything's snapped to a whole keyframe. So I can use the greater than, less than keys to find my keyframes. So still on frame 1 is my base pose, so that's cool. If I jump forward now on my timeline, you'll see that my idle animation starts at 125 and goes through 250 now. So I just need to change that here. 125 to 250. My punch animation starts at 375 and ends at 413. That's interesting. And 500 to 525 is my new run cycle. My jump up is 625 to 633. My jump idle would be 633 to 670. And then my jump down is 670 to 681. Okay. I wish I wouldn't have done that. Having said that, like, I just drew attention to the fact that this is a mistake a portion of you will make. And it's one of those things that if you're bouncing back and forth between doing different kinds of animation, it's inevitable. I could shift those keyframes around to get them back on whole numbers again if I want to, but it doesn't really matter to me because now I'm using this timeline editor, so all I need to do is click this button to get to my run section, and you'll see my run is still playing at the right speed now. It's just, now I have the right frame rates on it, right?
It was a nice tutorial on how to fix it.
Yeah, I meant to do that. Actually, now that I've done it, I probably will intentionally do it in the future. Because it's good to know. I know it complicates stuff a little bit, but now we have all of our animations in here, right? We understand what we're going to be doing. We're going to be exporting out an FBX sequence, right? Or an FBX files. And we're going to export out 7 FBX files. So we have 6 files for the animation and 1 for the model, okay? So the weird thing is even our animation files will contain the model, but I want to export out the model on frame 1 in the bind pose, right? It's cleaner that way, but really that model file, and this is why this is one of the reasons we do this early, right? Is let's say somebody makes a change to the model after you've done a whole bunch of animations, right? In a game production setting, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as the joint situation stays the same, they can just re-export the new model into the game engine, and your animations will continue to apply to it. In fact, if there's 100 different models that all contain this same skeleton, you can export out these 6 animations and apply them to all 100 of those models, right? You can use the same run cycle for 100 different characters. You usually don't want to, but you can, right? So there's a lot of reuse in this and having these files separate. So what we're going to have is the one file that just contains the mesh and the skeleton definition, and that's going to be our model file. And then we're going to have one file for each of our animation cycles, and we're going to use those inside of Unreal to look at them. So the first thing we need to do before we start exporting anything is sort of identifying those things, right? So here's our model export tab. Here's our animation export tab. So let's do a little bit of setup on this. Under the model export tab, I want to create a set that I'm able to just select, okay? So one of the ways we can export this out is just to select all of the joints, right? So I would go here to this TSMG Cruft, select the world joint, go all the way to the bottom, probably to right here. I probably don't even need these last 4 red ones, like that, right? So I select all of the joints that are going to be exported, and then all of the pieces of mesh that are going to be exported. And if I have all of those things selected, I could just say export selection on this model viewer, right? The thing about that is if I need to re-export again later, that's a lot of things to reselect, right? I have them all selected right now, so I could just create a quick selection set, or I could, if I click this button right here, that's what this will do. This will create an object set from the selected objects I have right now. So if I click that, I'll call this CHAR, right? And hit OK. So when I have that, now I have this option to export the object set. The cool thing is if you go down here and look, it actually created me a character set that's just called CHAR, and all the things I need to export are in there, right? And so basically it's just going to use the things in this set to export my character. Okay. Underneath the geometry on this model tab, it's got a lot of options. Smooth mesh. Right now I'm just going to leave it like it is. We may come back later and change this smooth mesh depending on what this looks like. Yes?
Can you start that at the beginning? I was catching up with fixing my brains. I just deleted that.
The beginning of what?
The way you're doing right now.
Game exporter part.
Just the exporter part?
Yeah.
Did you? So okay. Yes. No, it's all right. Well, that's all right. Like you still need to set it to 30 frames per second and all that stuff. So if you're at that part, that's all right. All I did was click this little plus sign under the model tab. Do you have the game exporter open? Okay, so click this little plus sign at the end of the model tab with the objects you need selected. So the way to find those, if you're using this game set, is to find the hierarchy of joints that are driving it. So for me, that was under this TSMG rig, TSMG Cruft, right? And then it's all of these joints under here. I just left out those last four, right? Because those aren't really joints, those are actually constraints. So you'll see that that's all one hierarchy chain that is under this TSMG world joint. Any game rig that is designed to be a game rig will have some similar hierarchy. It doesn't mean that if yours doesn't have this hierarchy, like you may have had another file that's not listed as Cruft or whatever, but we need that selected, and then we also need to select all of the pieces of the model in here, hips, neck, all of this stuff here. And once you have all of that selected, we click this little plus sign at the end of this first breakdown, or this first Dropbox set here, this little plus sign here, and that will create a new set, right? And I just called it character. You can call it whatever you want to. Sometimes when testing this out, I will make multiple sets. That way I can see what I actually need to export, because sometimes it's a little less intuitive than it is on this rig. Yeah, Sean?
Two things. First, you just need the mesh and the joints, right?
The mesh and the joints that are skinned to that mesh, or that mesh is skinned to. So you don't need any of the controls. I selected those extra constraints. That was me kind of being lazy. Like really, ideally, I would probably go in there and just deselect those. But Unreal probably isn't going to give me any errors with that. It's just going to recognize them as like empty nulls, and so it's not going to give me any problems.
Also, why would you need to triangulate? I assume that's just for certain game engines.
I don't know why you would need to, because it's going to anyway. Like all game engines are going to triangulate. For those of you who are interested in modeling, that's one of the reasons modeling in quads is important, is because when you triangulate it, you can predict what it's going to do. If you have a giant, like 50-sided end gun, who knows how it's going to chop that thing up and screw with your tangents or your So yeah, it can be an issue, but modeling in triangles is a pain in the butt, so nobody does that. But yeah, I guess there's several reasons you would want to, but Unreal is going to bring it in triangles anyway, so I don't worry about clicking that button. Smooth mesh, like what that's going to try to do is sort of round off your edges, so you get like a rounded normal. And so we can click it. I don't think it's necessarily going to subdivide that, but that's one of the things you can click if you want to. I kind of go back and forth. I usually don't worry about it on the first export because, frankly, usually my first export messes up. Usually I've done something wrong and I have to re-export it anyway, and so I make some changes. So, the next question, where is it going to put these files? And the answer is wherever you want them to, right? I usually create a folder myself, right? And in this case, it's got a path option here. If I click there, it's going to take me straight to my folder. And I just go under scenes, or you can just do it out here in the body mechanics rig folder. I just create a new folder and call it exports, right there. And then, yeah, that should be fine. And I just hit choose folder. So you'll see that my path for it now is under exports. And then here is a relatively important part, enter a file name. So this is what your character is going to be called from here on out. So randomly tapping the keys is probably not a good idea. Like, pick something that is appropriately generic enough to not be annoying to have to type every time, but also clear enough that you can tell it apart from other characters. So for me, this is the curvy female rig, so maybe I'll call it CFCHAR, right? Okay, and at this point, if I wanted to, I could hit export. There's also this button right here, View in FBX Review. If you select that, what it'll do is after it exports, it'll automatically launch it for you. That works great if you're testing the model. It doesn't work as well when you're testing the animations because you're going to export out 6 animations and it's just going to open 1. So I just manually open them. Yeah, Sean? Okay, so you can check it if you want to. Right now, I'm not going to worry about it. So we have all this stuff in here now. I'm going to go over to my animation clips, and I'm just going to plug in that same stuff, right? I'm going to go choose under instead of export all, I want to do export object set, and then I want to make sure I'm choosing this character set as my set. And then in this folder, it's already set to exports, so I'll say choose. And then I usually put the same prefix in there. So what it's going to do is, like if you look right now, underneath there, very faintly, it tells you how it's going to name the file. Right now it's going to name it idle.fbx, right? But if this idle is associated with a specific character, then you probably want to put the character's name in there too, right? So I did cfchar, and so now if I kind of click out of there, you'll see that this is cfchar idle with no space in there. So I usually just put an underscore. You don't want to put actual spaces in there. And the reason for that is because programming, right? Like a space means something in programming, right? Whereas in a file name, it doesn't always. So use dashes or well, probably not dots. Dashes or underscores are always important. So no spaces in any names ever again, except for your English papers. All right, and probably emails. Emails would make it much easier to read. So game-related stuff, though, like it's just a good habit to get into because you'll recognize that Maya doesn't always give you that option either. Like if you try to put a space in a file name, a lot of times Maya will put an underscore in there for you. Okay. Anybody needing a few more seconds to kind of catch up? So if we're at this point, we're actually ready to go, right? We're ready to export it. But I've made a lot of changes in here. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and save this. File, and I'll just do increment and save. So just adding an O2 to it. The reason for that is because this stuff in the game exporter, all of these things I've changed, those will save with the file. So if Maya crashes in the middle of export, I don't have to go refill that stuff out again, right? Okay. Just so I can see it, I'll go into my D volume here, go find my files, exports. And so we can start seeing these pop up when I export them. So if I go to the model file, this is the one I'm going to do first. I'm just going to hit the export button. And you're going to see I get a whole bunch of little at the bottom. And then it says export successfully. And if I go over here and look, looky there, it exported successfully. Yep, this is very gratifying. So I'm going to double click on this, and we get to see it in the FBX review. So, a couple of things you'll notice. It exported starting with my first frame. I'm all right with that, but like I probably, in reality, probably would want to re-export this with my cursor on frame 1. So let's go ahead and try this one more time, see if this fixes it. So I go all the way back to frame 1 when my character is on the bind pose, right? And just hit export again. Yes, I want to replace it. Okay. Yep. There we go. So now we're able to see her. Oh, all the animations. So I think I understand what the model had.
Is that the animations or?
No, just the model. And we'll do the animations next. So again, all I'm exporting from right now is from the model tab. And so even though I have animations in my Maya file, you'll see if I right click, I get this play button. And if I hit play, it didn't export out any animations. Okay? It just exported out this model in the bind pose, right? Basically, this is a skeleton and a mesh, but this particular file does not contain any keyframe data, right? To get the keyframe data, we have to export out from the animation tab. And so if we go over here, one tab over, it's going to seem pretty much like the same process. It's just going to export out each of these with animation data as well. You can click down here and look at some of the settings if you want to, but usually by default these are pretty close to correct, right? So making sure all of these are checked, I'm just going to hit export one more time. And you'll see that this time it does the same thing, except for my timeline, it does like a sampling across there. Okay? So, yes?
For the model, whenever you export it, does it need to be in a certain pose, or can you export it at any point?
You can really export it in any pose. I exported it on frame 1 in my bind pose, just so I could see it in the engine with no pose on it, right? So that's why one of the reasons I saved that keyframe on frame 1. So you'll notice like it's going across my timeline there for each of these animations. Here's what it's doing. We set like 3 keyframes per pose, right? And it generated these curves in between. Different programs calculate those curves differently. And so what Unreal is doing is or what the exporter is doing is to make sure that you actually get the animation you want. It's going to every frame of that and setting a keyframe on every joint that you had selected. So you're exporting out like literally thousands of keyframes on this thing. So instead of having a curve, we just have a keyframe for every frame. Right? That makes this file a little bigger, but once we get it into Unreal, Unreal will kind of sample that and reduce the keyframes it doesn't think are necessary. The problem with that is sometimes Unreal is wrong, right? Sometimes it reduces keys you wanted, and your animation doesn't look exactly the same, right? So we get this export successful, which is cool, because that's how I wanted it to export. And now you'll see that each of my animations have a file in here. They're a little bit smaller. I'm not actually sure why that is, because I would have expected that they contain the model data. But still, let's go ahead and look at one. If I double click on this, it opens up my character. And you'll see that I have this idle animation drop down here. The navigation here is just like Maya. And if I right click and hit play, I should be able to see my animation on that idle, right?
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, it'll just ignore all textures.
Yeah, that's okay. Oh,
I'm just saying that's why it's small. It's just ignoring all the texture data.
what is the idle?
Or the animation, when you export them, it ignores all the.
That makes sense, yeah. So, yeah, it probably is not bringing in any materials. It's still bringing in the mesh. But you get to see, like, now we're able to see our animations in here, right? Now, if you open this up in the FBX review and you see the wrong thing, that's good to know, because before you even open up Unreal, you can start making changes to fix this, right? But this is the animation we've exported out for the jump land or whatever. And if I look at our punch animation, look at that. That's why I get paid the big bucks for my masterful animation skills. So again, these are test animations. These are proxy animations. Placeholders. We're going to put them into the engine and make this character function in game correctly, but the animations are going to look bad. The cool thing about it is you've already learned how to make them better, right? You just animate, and then you re-export over these files we just made, or just re-export to new files, and then we just re-import that into Unreal, and it updates the animation, and your game is still playable. You just watch your animations get better and better and better every time you play it, right? That means that you can now, after we get through today's process, you can just focus on animating, right? Ideally. Like, inevitably, a couple of little things will mess up here and there, and we'll have to tweak them. But this is the actual animation process for games. It's interesting because it is a little different than the animation process, or the animation pipeline, I guess, for film, right? Which is animate it until it's perfect and then hand it to somebody else to render, right? Like, we're getting it in there so we can test the final render like in the 15 seconds. Right? We can export, re-import into the game, and see what our final render looks like. I interviewed with this is a long time ago. I interviewed with ZeniMax Online. Like they did the sort of the MMO for the Elder Scrolls series, and this is something that they do as a group. All of the animators would export out their files, and then you would go sit in a room together and play the game. They actually had a test level that had every character that you could possibly play in the game. And so let's say you animated this new giant monster that you have to fight. They're like, all right, he's in section B17 or whatever, and you would launch the game and go in there and try to fight that character to see how it worked, right? Again, gameplay is like, this is kind of the hard thing about being an animator for games. Your animation is there to add to the gameplay, right? It's not there to necessarily steal the show. If it's really good, then it draws attention, but really ideally, like most of the things we do in digital media, if you did it really well, nobody sees it, they just feel it, right? They're already so into the game that it just feels right. That's how you know you're doing it right. Like if they stopped to pay attention to the animation, then the game wasn't fun to them. They were looking for a distraction. Right? So again, that's what we're doing. This is a refining process. As you animate inside of Maya, we re-export and refine that in the game and see if it's working better. Right? The game is actually how we test our animation. So now we have all these files. Anybody need me to pause and wait for you to catch up on any of it? All right. Cool. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. The video will be boring for 5 minutes as I hop around and help people answer questions. Oh, I see that. Fusion World Joint. Fusion World Joint. Right below where you're going. Hit that plus sign. Actually, hold shift. And it's like, yeah, you have it. Yeah, click TSMG. And hold shift. It's like a block. Now the other thing is I talked about, yeah, how far we are. You don't have control side each of those. Coming up there.
basically what you're getting here is that FBX version is not understanding materials. What that means is once you get in Unreal, you can actually spend a little bit of time fixing the materials again. So not take a little bit of figure out what it's exactly right, or you just go on. But we'll probably just create a material for the anyway. And Unreal may recognize the materials correctly. We'll probably need material work. Yeah, that's work. Is this the guy who did the, was it the video that?
Yeah, it was a little video.
Yeah.
He does a couple, like, I follow him on Twitter, and he posts like a spider video recently that showed off how they did all the action ones, and there was like actual waves, like, you know, the whole line that we have on here, there's like actual like waves for some of the actual ones, which are nice videos, super cool.
Oh, they said, who was it said that? Somebody told me they were going to do the thing here. You know what? Oh, the guy from I'll show you.
Okay. What's going on?
I got 3 hours work done, so I'm trying as fast as I can. Because I'm also going to the racks everywhere.
It may be better to stop and watch it. Like, there's a different are you, what are you?
I'm on the contract now, and I'm just going to try to this one.
You don't have to see it. Like, it's just something so you can see some. Like, your punch could literally be your character. And it just needs like some keyframes.
So if you adjust some things on the animation, you export them, you don't need to worry about deleting old files or anything?
No. So what we're going to do is Unreal is not going to pull directly from this folder all the time. It's like when we import the FBX file into Unreal, it's going to like kind of embed all of that information into Unreal. And so then you can delete those files if you want to. What we would do is if we re-export over top of it, we would tell Unreal, hey, just re-import that original file we exported, and it would just go back to that same location and pull in anything new from it. If I delete it, I can, or move it or something like that, I can just tell it to re-export and here's the location of the, or re-import and here's the location of the new import. So yeah, you can save this old one or you can copy over it. Interestingly, in a game pipeline, you would copy over it, but you would save, it's called a subversion system. The one I'm most familiar with is called Perforce. Yeah, Perforce. And Perforce lets you check out a file. It's like all of the files live on a network, and you check out the file you're going to export, and then you export out and save over top of that, but it remembers all of those old versions too. So if that export messes up, you just revert back to the older version. So for me, I'm probably just going to keep re-exporting over top of this. I think I may, if this works cleanly, I may save these just as like a, in case I need something to test again quickly. But this is my folder full of files. They all seem to have worked well. So that means it's time to jump into Unreal. Okay. So if you've launched the Epic Games Launcher, why is it so hard for me to say? Launch the Epic Games Launcher. Unreal Engine 4.19.1, right? So again, I kind of mentioned this before, but it's probably worth reiterating. If you decide you want to download this at home, I would probably try to download this version. That way you don't have to reinstall the version you download here, right? Because then you'd have to download it every time. If you're wanting to use a newer version, that's cool. Probably what you would do is try to install it on a portable hard drive. That way you can launch it from there instead of from the Epic Games Launcher. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and click Unreal Engine 4.191, and it's going to load it up. And anybody interested in doing the 2D side scroller instead of the 3D one? No? All right, I'm probably going to do that one later as like a fun one. But we could try to test it out with these same files. So if I get a little bit of time in between classes or before class, I'll probably do that. So again, I know we kind of briefly looked at this. I have all of these pre-made templates to start with, right? And these are actually really kind of fun if you want to play around with them sometime. I think that the method we're getting ready to do will work on all of these. I think it'll work on side scroller, third person, and probably top down pretty easily. Because I think they're all going to pretty much have the same character. They just have a slightly different camera setup, right? But to make it easy to understand, we're just going to go ahead and do third person. So I'll click that. And I would save this somewhere that you want to keep it, right? Like if you can save it in your documents if you want to. For me, every time I log in here, it actually wipes my documents. So I don't think that's the case for you all. So I'm going to save it somewhere where I can keep it for later. I'll probably go ahead and put it in my D drive. So I'll click here under folder. What I would say is I wouldn't recommend, at least for right now, I wouldn't recommend doing this on your jump drive or your portable hard drive. Because that's a lot of information it has to pull from a hard drive. I would probably try doing it on a local, I don't know. You can try either one of them because you can always just move that whole folder and go find it. But to me, like unless it's a fast, like a USB 3, like it's kind of your call on that one. But if it's like USB 2 or something like that, like a thumb drive, it's probably going to pull it kind of slow and the game would play kind of laggy. So I'm going to go ahead and put mine on the D drive here, but you probably, you may not be setting at the same computer tomorrow, so new folder, and we'll call this game character UE4. Oh, 4. Select folder, and we'll call this what is this? Third person game. So when I create this, it's creating it for a console or desktop game, right? Maximum quality with the starter content. So one of the cool things about this project is there's lots of free content out there. If you go to the Epic Games Launcher again, let me see if I can still have that open, and go to their store. I'm sorry, no, it's Unreal Marketplace, not the store. There is tons of free models. There's tons of full environments. In fact, if I just change this to all products, let's do, let's see, free, all products, I just want the free products. Maybe I just need to search environment. There we go. So there's tons of free worlds that your character can run around in. That one's $59, so you may not want it, but okay, so apparently this search tool is not the best in the world. Environments, let's go there. But you can sort these, filter, price, free, confirm. And so here's a whole bunch of free worlds you can get. This advanced village pack is cute. And there's also some stuff from Infinity Blade, open world demo collection, like a whole bunch of different stuff. And you can just go ahead and download that and plug that into your game and start building in that world if you wanted to. So there's a lot of things. There's also just by default some free stuff you can start building your world with in Unreal. So just if you're wanting your character to run around in somewhere that looks neat, that's cool. Otherwise, it's going to give us this place right here, this empty like playground looking place. And any changes we make, we have to sort of drop those in there. But there are some free starter content assets as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the project. And it's going to open it up. There we go. So before we get in this too much, I always like going all the way over here in this bottom corner right here, next to where it says Add New. If you go right below that, there's a little button. It's like a bunch of like lines and stuff, and that's going to expand this out to feel a little bit more like the outliner or like Windows Explorer, right? Because really, that's all that is in this content folder here. This is an actual folder I just created on my D drive when I hit create the project, and this is all of the starter content that it gave me. Right? For the third-person game, part of that included this third-person blueprint or third-person BP that we see here, and so we'll see these blueprints in here. It also included this third-person character. Which includes the mesh. Wait, what is that? That's different. And then this mannequin. The mannequin is the character that we have here. So you'll see we have the character, which is the materials, the meshes, the textures, and then the animations. Right? So we looked at the animations earlier. We'll talk about that in a minute. Some of you, when you exported out your character, they had materials in Maya, and then when you looked at them in the FBX review, they were gray or the materials didn't work right. That means we may have to do a little bit of extra material work to get the same materials to function correctly on the character once we get it in there. It's not super hard, but just like materialing would be in Arnold, you have to do a little bit of work to make that work. And that might be one of those things that we just not worry about it for right now, and that's what you worry about before you kind of capture your final piece. So you'll also notice there are some free models in here under geometry and meshes. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, it's under starter content. There's a whole bunch of like different things you can drag in there, different maps, different textures and stuff like that. And this is kind of cool because you can actually just drag some of this onto objects in here and get materials on there. Right? So we can play around with that just a little bit more in the future. Right now, we're going to talk about what we're going to do. So we have a character that we made that we're going to use to replace the mannequin character, right? So we looked at this already. If I hit this play button, I can start playing the game. My mouse will look around. WASD will run, right? And the space bar will jump. So I think the important thing to remember about this is that the only reason Unreal knows to play those different animations is because we're telling it to. We're giving it some commands somewhere in the background that says, whenever I hit the W key, move the character forward at this rate and play this animation cycle, right? So if I hit this escape button, you'll see that this thing here, right? Notice that this character is kind of it's got a camera behind it. It's got this, sorry, Sarit was messaging me. So this character is, this character is made up of a couple of different elements, right? You see that little pill shape that surrounds the character? That is actually what the character is. Like when I hit the W key, it's moving that little pill shape around, right? That's actually my player, that's the pawn, right? That camera is following that little pill shape, and attached to that pill shape is the character running in place, right? So whenever I hit the W key, that pill shape moves around, the camera follows it, the character runs in place, and it looks like our character is running forward. Whenever I tap the space bar, that pill shape pops up into the air. And the pill jumps, right? That's why we didn't have our character jump up in the air when he jumped. He just sort of jumps and kind of hovers there right off the ground and then lands, right? Because what we want is our character to just kind of be hovering inside of that pill shape while that pill shape is jumping. Does that make sense? Okay. So what we're really going to do is we're going to replace that character that is in the pill shape. We're not going to do that first, though. Because since all of that exists already, since that character already exists, all that code that is driving that animation also exists. And since I hate writing code, I'm going to steal it. I had a programmer friend who had like 20 years in the industry, and he had like posted about it, and he's like, I wonder when they're all going to figure out that all I'm really doing is stealing code from the internet. And it really is that, it's fine to borrow this stuff. There's no, you're just working on functionality, right? Because really code is just a solution to a problem. And the problem we have here is how to make my new character run around, right? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our character in, right? I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder for my character. I'll fold all this down. Right click in here. Wait, how do I make a new folder? This button right here. Let's click on content first. Click there and say, no, wait, I want to make it out here. There we go. Right click out here in the content section and say new folder. And I'm going to call this CF character. All right. So that's my new character, and that's where I'm going to put it. So if I double click on that, now I can import into this folder. So we have this import button. I'm going to click it. I'm going to go find the place that I exported these to, right? So for me, it's this D drive under game rigs, body mechanics, exports. And so the first thing I'm going to import in is this cfchar.fbx. So I'm going to import in the character part first. And then the reason I'm doing this is because then it will establish the character, and then I can import the animations onto that character, right? There's other ways of doing it. This is just a little cleaner. So what we're importing in is a skeletal mesh. So you want to make sure that's selected, right? I'm not really worried about any of this stuff here. I think that all of this just looks correct. So let's just go ahead and leave it like that and hit import all. And so remember, I just clicked that FBX file. Watch how many files it creates for me. So it's importing a bunch of stuff. There we go. Now look at all these errors. So I'm not too worried about it just yet. But there she is. So I got my character model. Like this is my model file. And it's a skeletal mesh. What that means is there are two different types of mesh inside of Unreal. There's a skeletal mesh, which means it's driven by a skeleton and you plan on seeing it deform. And then there's a static mesh, which could be like a crate or a box or a tree or whatever. Like you're not really planning on seeing it deform. Yes? Crash. Import F with F. Let's try it one time. So did you open up correctly in the FBX review?
see how all of these, so you selected this. Let's create a new. Just so we have this in our drive, just in case, I'm gonna just export this out. So maybe that. And the reason why sometimes it is a little bit actually better. It may have been in the model tab, but like I said, export all was turned on, so that that's that.
So apparently that video I made about the good rigs versus the bad rigs, yeah, the good one's bad. Sorry. Also, sorry, camera, that I just sat here and recorded 20 minutes of nothing. So there's a way we can fix it. It's going to take a little bit of extra work if you're wanting to use that one. Anybody else using that one? You are? Is it importing correctly for you?
There's a duplicate root that you have to delete. You
Yeah.
have to delete, but you have to rename it because it's under the same name.
Yeah.
It imported it, but there are material issues.
Okay, so I think that's what's going on with hers too. She's getting that duplicate joint. So we'll work together in a bit. Is it just, did you just delete it from the skinning of the head and hair, or did you just rename it?
For me, the issue was her poncho. It had another control joint on it that was because there's, like, control 1 through 5, but the 5th one was missing and there were 2 4s. So you have to rename one of them to Punch Out 5. I'm not sure if that's the same issue they're
It
having.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll work with that one here too. You just rename that inside of Maya and then just
Yeah,
re-export
I just
it.
renamed it to Punch Out 5.
Okay.
Oh, I got it.
So, yeah, go ahead, export them out.
Should be able to export out these clips. Okay. Okay, it's 1:05. Class finishes at what time? 2:05? 2:05. Okay, let's see how close we can get. If we don't get it, like the homework will just be kind of watching the videos and trying to finish it up, and then I'll just hop around and help you individually. So once we get it to this point, we have the character working, right? This is her. You'll see that we bring in a whole bunch of extra files with this. We got this character model. That's the thing we imported. And when we imported it, Unreal said, wait, that has a material on it. So let's create an Unreal material file too. That's what that skin map 1 is, right? It also said, hey, there's some skeletons in here. Let's create, or there's some joints in here. Let's create a skeleton file as well. Because Unreal recognizes those as two different elements, right? And then it also said we need to generate a physics asset. And the reason for that is because you may want to turn your character into a ragdoll at some point to, like, you know, something blows up, kills the character, you can just turn on ragdoll to get that going on. Or maybe you just need your character to be able to punch an object, right? We do need that. So those are the 4 things it generates whenever we import this character in. And it takes all 4 of those for us to have a functioning character. Now what this doesn't have on it yet, like if I double click on this char node, I get this, right? And you'll see that I have all these different nodes associated with it at the top. I can go to the skeletal node, and you'll see there's my hierarchy, just as I'd exported it, right? And so I can start clicking these joints one at a time if I wanted to. This is actually really neat because that means Unreal can take control of any of those joints if we wanted it to, right? If we wanted it to say, hey, make our character punch on the upper half of the body and run on the lower half of the body, we can use some programming to take control of certain joints, right? What it doesn't have here is animation, and that's because even though this is a skeletal mesh, we haven't brought in any animation yet. Now you can create this if you wanted to on another folder, but I'm just going to go ahead and import it into this folder. I'm going to right click and say import to game CF character, and then I'm going to select all of these assets. So you should have 6 files here, right? You should have an idle, your jump up, your jump down, your jump loop. your punch, and your run. Okay, that's what we're going to need to finish the rest of this up. So I'm just going to select them all and hit open, but the way I import this is a little different, right? Because we're not importing in 6 more skeletal meshes. We're importing an animation onto a skeletal mesh. Okay, so we'll try this and see, but I don't really even need the skeletal mesh part, right? Oh wait, I guess I do. I need to choose the skeletal mesh that I want this to apply to. There are 2 skeletal meshes I can, because it recognizes there's animation on this file, and it's like, which one of these do you want us to put the animation on? So the one I want is the CF character skeleton, right? So I want to make sure that's chosen here, and then I also want to choose import animation. Now I'm going to use exported time to start with, and I think that will work fine. But we may have to go back and look at this again. So I'll hit import all, and it'll take it a few minutes, but what it's going to do is import each of those animations and apply them onto the skeleton that it generated, right? Okay, sure. I'll ignore that for right now and see what I get. What? Okay, let's hit Control Z. I did not want to bring all that in. I saw what I need to do, sorry. Let's get rid of all of this, actually, except for the CF character, my CF character physics asset, my CF character so I'm just going to delete all of those. Force delete. Get rid of them. Okay, let's try it one more time. I'm going to do that same thing, except for this time I'm going to make sure that I go down here and uncheck import mesh, because I don't need the mesh 4 more times. And I'm going to make sure by unchecking import mesh, it also gets rid of the materials and the textures, right? So I don't necessarily need the mesh, I just need the animation, right? So as long as that's set up like that, I should be able to do import all. There we go. That's what I wanted, those other 6 animations. So if I decide I wanted to organize this a little bit, I can still make a folder in here, call this anim, and I can still drag these animation files into here. Move here. So now when I double click on this character, you'll notice I have another tab up there on the top that says animation. So if I click on one of those, or if I click on that, you'll see that I get a list of animations and I get to start seeing my character running in the engine. Just a quick little shortcut key, I can just click and drag to move around in here, but if I want to tumble around it like in Maya, if I hold down Alt, I can do that. Right? And so now you can see each of those animations in the engine. I click punch, kind of double click punch. Okay, getting closer. So now all of these animations are in here, right? The problem with that is they're just animations, right? Like all these are assets that are in here. I haven't told Unreal to do anything with them yet. Before I do that, I need one more thing, right? I'm just going to go ahead and close this down. And inside of this little scene here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create an advanced asset, I think it is, under animation. And I'm going to go to blend space 1D. So it's going to ask me which skeleton I want to put this on, the CF character skeleton. And I'll go ahead and call this, name it a little bit better, CF blend space. Okay. So double click on that to open it up. Now what this means is some of our animations, we don't want to just start playing, right? Like our punch, we do. If I tap the space bar, I want that to immediately just play, right? But for example, my idle, right? Like it's just playing, and then there's my run just playing. But if I don't have some sort of transition between those two, when my character stops running, they're going to pop to an idle, right? And it's going to feel very jumpy, and very twitchy. And so what this is allows me to do a blend between those two animations. So this blend space is kind of going to represent both the idle and the run, because if I start to run, I may like hit the W key and then kind of release it almost immediately, and that means it'll like get halfway into running and then just blend back to stop, right? And so we get this like transition. You can have multiple different blend spaces in this, though, right? I could blend from idle to walk to run to sprint, right? So I can have all these different things that are controlled programmatically and sort of blend into each other. So the way we do this is I just drag and drop my animation into here. So I'm going to start with my idle. I'll drag it. I usually drag it all the way at the beginning. So you see I get this little green dot. So my idle is playing, and then I'll grab my run, and I'll drag that to the end. So what I should be able to do now is blend in between this. So this is if we have a value of 0 on this blend space, my character is idling. But as I start moving it forward, you'll see it starts to blend into that walk until we're all the way up here to run. Okay? And what that'll allow it to do is to sort of fake the character speeding up and slowing down. Okay? So we got that. We're cool. Let's go ahead and close this. Now, I've been doing something bad. I'm like somewhere people who use Unreal a lot are just cringing left and right. Because I've not saved any of this, I've not compiled anything, right? Unreal's a game engine, right? It has to constantly keep track of multiple assets, not just that Maya file you made, right? And so I just want to save everything I have right now, just so I know it works. So I'm just going to go File and just say Save All. Right? And that means now if Unreal crashes, I can open it back up and I'll still be in this same spot. Okay. So our character's still not going to work though. If I hit play, we're still going to get that mannequin. Right? I'll be honest, I'm a little clunky at this because I only do it once a year, right? So sort of bear with me if I start to, if I stutter a little bit or get into a weird area. What we're going to do is we're going to go over here and look at our mannequin. Okay? So that's the character that if I hit play, it's this guy, right? It's how he's running around, how he's functioning. And so if I hit escape, get out of that, go back to my mannequin, I'll go to my character. So there's his model, his skeleton, his physics asset. And then let's look at under animation. Here it is. So you'll see that we have all of those same things again, right? We have the third person idle run. That's that blend from idle to walk to running. Right? They actually have a walk in here as well, it kind of looks like. And we have all of those same animations we just created. They maybe name them something different. But the thing we don't have is this third person anim BP, right? And if I double click on this, BP means blueprint, okay? And this gets really kind of complicated. So this is not something that I feel is in the purview of teaching in this course of how to use blueprint. What I'm going to do is teach you enough to use it for this project. But recognize what blueprint is a way of scripting without actually having to type a bunch of stuff.
Oh, this is like a Boolean, true or false.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Right? So, and so this is the thing that we need. We get this Is the character in the air? That's a variable, right? What's the character's speed? That's a variable. And this is like a way of just sort of seeing, like basically, if your character is in the air, if your character is not in the air, then it can enter a transition. And don't even worry about what that means. Just know that that's what this is. It's a little graph that allows us to create some commands, right? However, this is not necessarily the one we want to look at. I want to go over here a little bit further to event graph, and we'll see that we have some stuff going on here, and this jump start section here, that's not as important here. Wait, is it? Yeah, here we go. If I go to this anim graph out here, so if I go to the event graph, this middle one here was probably, I think we were like here is where this was showing us. If I just walk backwards a little bit to the anim graph, we see this. So this is another series of commands that says, when something is happening, do something else. Or if this happens, do this, right? And if I double click on this default state machine, you'll see that this is what is going to drive all of our animations. So currently our character is idling, but if I trigger something that makes my character go up into the air, it will start changing states. It will go from idle run to jump start, and then from jump start to jump loop, and then from jump loop to jump in, and from jump in to idle run again, right? And there are different things that cause those transitions to happen. So for example, the reason I would go from jump loop to jump in is in this little squiggly thing here, which says my character's not in the air anymore, right? So as soon as my character's not in the air, it will trigger, right? And my character will land, right? So all this is a way of saying, depending on whatever the player's doing or whatever the game is doing, trigger these certain events, right? So let's go ahead and close this just for a second. I'm going to go back to my character, CF character, go to my animation. I'm going to right click, create an advanced asset, and I'm going to create an animation blueprint. Now, when I do this, it's like, which character do you want to make an animation blueprint for? Which one do you think? Yep, that one right there. Because we still have the animation skeleton in here, or the UE4 mannequin in here. So I'll hit OK. And so now I have this new anim blueprint. Let's rename it. Oh. Rename. I'm just going to do CF. There we go. Again, you can name these whatever you want to. You just need to remember what they are. So now here's the thing that's a little troubling. A lot of that stuff that's in the mannequin blueprint is not in our blueprint. But by creating our own blueprint, now everything that needs to be associated with our character is associated with our character. So this blueprint is pointing to our female character, right? And that means I can just go into that mannequin blueprint and steal some stuff to start making ours work, right? So for example, this, look, like I don't have any default state machine piping in there. Rather than create one ourselves, we can go steal it. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go back to the mannequin blueprint.
Which blueprint did you use last?
Huh?
Which blueprint did you use that was in class?
Under anim, right click, create advanced, and then do animation blueprint. Yep. Okay. So our mannequin, go back into that blueprint. Let's just kind of steal this stuff one at a time. If I go, let's see, my event graph. Yeah, so I don't know why it always opens this in different spaces, but let's just grab, what we're going to grab in here is just a few different things. I think we're going to grab this one and this one. Is that correct? No. I think we're just going to grab everything for right now and hit Control C. And then I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to mine, open that up, and I'm going to look at my event graph. So you'll see my event graph doesn't have all of that stuff in it, right? It just has a few of them. So I'm just going to click in here and hit Control V and paste all of that in there. Control V. All right. Control C. Close that. Go back to mine. Oh, well, thanks. It's already in there. And really what I need to change is this event blueprint update animation option. This may actually just work like this. Is in air. Okay. So one of the things we do need to do, we don't have an is in the air variable and we don't have a speed variable. So you're seeing we get these warnings here. Right. I'll probably just go ahead and delete that. So I need to make those. So under variables, I'm going to hit this plus sign. It's red, so that means it's the right kind. And I'm just going to say is in air question mark. And I need to write that in the same way that it's here, right? Hit enter. And I'm going to create a new variable. But you'll see when I do that, it's red again. I don't necessarily need that. So the variable type I want to create, oh, that may be all right. Yeah. So when I click that to create this new variable, it's creating a Boolean. I don't want a Boolean. A Boolean is just a yes or no answer. I want a float answer. I want a 0 to whatever answer, right? So I'll move that down and choose float. And I'll just call this new variable speed. And so now I should be able to hit compile. Why am I getting an error there? I think so. Oh, wait. Is in air may need to not, yeah, you may be right. May need to not have spaces. Yeah. So is in air needs to not have spaces. So it looks like everything worked okay. Let's hit play. I don't actually see any errors happening. So again, compile it, save it, close it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it gets more complicated. Let's go ahead and open it up again just to look. So now what we have is this event graph, right? And if I go to my anim graph, I have this, right? So I need an anim graph in here as well. So let's go ahead and close all this. I'll go back to my mannequin, third person animation. So their anim graph is right there. I'm going to just choose this default state machine. And I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to go back to mine. Hit Control V. And then I just have to drag this into result. Okay, compile. So when I hit compile, I get a lot of errors. Okay, this is the things that I have to fix now, are all these errors. So I'll go ahead and hit save anyway, because I'm all right with that. And if I go into my state machine you'll see that this is what we're getting. Again, compile, and you'll see the errors I'm getting from this. So the reason for this is because it's looking for different nodes, okay? Because it's still looking for some of the mannequin nodes or some of the mannequin commands. So let's look at each of these one at a time. If I go into idle run, you'll see that what it's looking for is this third person idle run 2D, right? I don't need that one anymore. This is just an animation, right? So if I go to my asset browser, I can bring in my idle run blend space, which is this one right here. So I can plug that in there, plug my speed into none, plug this into result, and then I can just delete that one. Okay? That doesn't look right. Let me make sure I did that right. One more time. Yeah, that's right. Speed into none. Why is that saying none instead of? Oh. So now if I hit compile, okay. So here's part of the problem. This speed node here is the speed node that was used from the other animation, from the mannequin. So I'm going to delete it and use the new speed variable that I created. Right? So let's see. I think this is a get speed.
It is.
Yeah. And then I plug in that to there, compile, and one of them disappears. Is that right? Yeah. Yes. That's not right. Yeah, that's right. Read this value in variable speed. So this is the, yeah. So speed, drag that in there again, get the speed, and plug that into there. So yeah, compile, save. And so I don't know if you noticed, but some of our errors disappeared. So I'll go back to my default here, and so we fixed that. Now we just have to work around this list until we fixed all of our errors. So this first one here is in error. That's an error, and it's because it's using the old one. I'll delete that. Drag our is in error in here. I think that's a get as well. Can't enter transition. So let's see again, if I hit compile and save, let's see if we lose some errors. Compile, yep. So that one means that one's working now. So default. Our jump start, again, this is the same thing. Play third person jump start. So this is a play the animation option, so I think I can actually just drag my jump up to here. Plug that in instead. Delete that one. Okay. Again, compile, some of my errors disappeared, hit save. This is actually really kind of gratifying, I think. So kind of looking at what we're doing here though, right? We're taking our animation and we're determining how or why it's going to transition into the other animation. So we have our idle and run, right? And it's going to stay in our idle or run depending on whether our character is moving, right? And then to transition into that jump start, the way it knows to do that is to just always be checking, is your character in the air, right? And if it is, then it's going to start playing the jump start animation. Really quick, I just want to look at this. Yeah, I think we're all right here. So from jump start to our jump loop, we have another transition. So this one is a little different, right? This is, I'll go ahead and leave this, but this is time remaining ratio, okay? So that means how much of the animation is remaining, right? And basically toward the end of your animation, it's going to take a percentage of that, and instead of snapping to the end of that next animation, it will blend into the up pose, right? So you get a really subtle blend, so you don't get quite as hard of a pop. So I just need to find another one of these time remaining ratio assets, because this one's still looking at a different file, or looking at the mannequin. So I'll just right click and start typing in time remaining ratio for CF character jump up. Okay, so yours again will have a different name, but we get that. And I'll just plug this into the top part of this and delete that third person. Now, here's the cool thing. This little number here allows us to change when that animation starts, right? So when we test it, if it seems like it's transitioning too early or too late, I can go in there and change that 0.1 to 0.01 or 0.05 or 0.3, whatever it is that works better, right? And so this allows us to kind of customize how it's going to work inside of the engine. Again, compile and watch those errors disappear. Save. So back to default. Now our jump loop. Again, this is just needing to play our jump loop animation. So I'll drag this in here and plug it in. Now here's something to, and I can delete the old one. Now here's something to recognize. If I select this, see how this is set to play as a loop? So that means that once it gets to the end of that animation, it'll start playing it again, which is what we want, right? But it's not what we wanted on the jump up animation, right? We wanted it to play the jump up and then end that animation and play the jump loop. So that means I'll go ahead and hit compile and save, but I should probably go back while I'm still thinking about it and change this to not have loop checked. Right. Again, compile, save. So look at that. We have like a quarter of the number of errors we had before. We're practically pros. So back to our default. We have this transition from jump loop to jump end. So I'll go into that. This one's pretty easy. Is it in the air? If it's not, then it can enter this next transition. So I'm just going to drag my is in the air into here. Get is in air. So it's like getting the information of whether it's in the air or not. And if it's not, then it can enter the transition. Delete that. Compile. Save. We only have 5 errors to go. So jump end. Again, I just need to drag my jump. Mine's jump down. Right? And I just need to plug that into the result, delete the other one, and make sure that this one is not set to loop. So it's just going to play it one time. Compile, save, only 3 to go. I'm not sure what that means. So let's go back here to default. Hopefully this fixes it. Grab this last one. Again, this time remaining ratio. I just need another one of those. So I start typing in time remaining ratio of that character jump down. I plug that into the top. Delete the other. Compile. Save. No more errors. So with all of that, surely to goodness, if I hit this play button, our character is going to start running around our scene, right? Play. Aw, man. Why is it still that guy, right? Well, the reason it's still that guy is because there's, because our player is still set to be that guy, right? If I zoom out, we'll still see it there, right? So all I've done is create my character and this set of triggers that will affect that character. But what I haven't done is put him in the scene yet, or put her in the scene yet, right? So to do that, I can go in here to my third person BP, I think it is, at the bottom. find it. Yeah, so if I go all the way to third person BP and this third person character and double click on that, so now we're going to get a whole bunch of other things in here too, right? A couple of them are, this is like what is making our character move. So for example, our mouse input, this little section is how it knows to like look around when I move my mouse, right? We're going to come back to this in a few minutes because this is how we're going to probably add our punch. Not sure we're going to get to that today. We're going to get close. But all of this stuff is in here, but this isn't necessarily what we want to look at. We go to our construction script. Get that. We don't really need that. So in the viewport, you'll see this is what my character pawn looks like, or my third-person character object looks like. So again, we have this capsule component. We have this arrow, which is like, this kind of lets me know which direction we're pointing. And then we have this mesh inherited, right? This is the part I may need to pull the YouTube video back up again to ask questions of myself. Ask questions of older Greg, younger Greg, whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace that with our current character, right? There we go. And I will, so I can do that just by clicking here on the skeletal mesh, and I'm going to choose my CF character skeletal mesh. Well, that's interesting. I did not realize she was that much smaller. I didn't think she should be. It'll be okay for right now. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't. It's okay. So this is her now, right? So we have her in there. Under here, we want to use the animation blueprint, and we want to choose the animation blueprint to use. So ours would be CF Anim Blueprint. Okay? So now if I hit compile and save and close this and hit play, look at that. She's running around. Now, all of this should work now. We got the run, we got the jump. She can look around. You can see that she's in the idle animation, right? And if I hit W or any of these, she'll run around. So this is really where we want to be, because to update any of this now, all I have to do is re-export my animation, make it better, right-click on that animation, and say re-import with new source, or just, I think I can just re-import it. Yeah, re-import, right there. If I do re-import with new source, it'll let me go look for a different file to re-import, right? And I can just continually update that animation over and over again. I don't have to export the whole character. I can work on my run, re-export that, re-import it into here, and see it get better and better and better, right? So there's something's missing, which is a punch, right? We need some form of punch. I'm going to go ahead and save all first. Save all, because it's kind of working. Let me click on this, okay, and try to remember exactly what I do here. Yeah, that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this blueprint here, this third character. So remember when I said that this event graph is controlling all of these different elements of the movement and all of that? Well, we're just going to add another one in here, right? We're going to add a trigger for when we press our mouse button, okay? So, let me go ahead and hit pause here. If I right-click here and say left, I think it's one word. There we go. Left mouse button. We're going to get this event for when I click the left mouse button. So, what do I want it to do when I click the left mouse button? Anybody? I just wanted to play an animation, right? And the animation I want to play is the punch animation. So I'll start typing in play, it's not play animation montage, sorry. It is play animation mesh. So let me try that again. Play animation mesh, right there. So we get this. The mesh that we're talking about is on the mesh of our character. And so all I really need to do is drag from pressed into this button right here. And the new animation to play, I can select from my assets. Right? And so the animation I wanted to play is the punch. Okay? I don't want it to be looping. So if I hit compile and save, now when I hit play on this, whenever I click the left mouse button, she punches. Yay! It's happening. Okay. Escape. File. Save all. I think we're going to be able to do this, y'all. I think we're going to make it through it. How many of you are actually with me? How many of you are actually at this point? Any single person? All right. Okay, Brandon's with me. Oh, do you have a question?
My default wasn't showing up in the other stuff earlier. So
Okay.
I didn't get the jump just yet, but I have to
Okay, Brandon's not with me either. so it looks like I lost everybody. That's cool. Huh?
It's not typical.
Not typical. I guess I got a little carried away. People didn't want to slow me down. That's all right.
Is it harder to do this lecture?
I'll probably trim out some stuff on the next one. I really want you to understand why, but at the same time, most of you are going to be like, I'll just watch the video again if I ever need to do it. So we have this video. This video is probably going to be a little more accurate, but probably a little less concise for you to follow through again. All right, but that's fine. Like this is okay if this happens. I would say I wouldn't come into next class period without this because, like, what I'm going to do is just start working on the animations. We really want to get this part behind us. That way you don't have to spend any class time thinking about Unreal anymore. All of the Unreal thinking is over with. There's a, Mark Twain had a phrase, you probably heard me mention this before. He had a phrase called eat the worm. And basically, it doesn't have anything to do with tequila. It's basically the idea is, I'm sorry, no, it's eat the frog. Eat the worm does have to do with tequila. Disregard that. Eat the frog was what it was called. And it was this phrase that he would say is like, if you have something that you're really dreading doing, like eating a frog, right? Let's say every day for work you had to eat a frog, right? The best thing to do is just eat that frog first thing in the morning, right? Because then the rest of your day is going to look up from there, right? But if you wait to eat that frog until the end of it, then you're just going to be dreading it, and then you have to end your day by eating this frog, right? Like, just eat that frog first thing. That's what we're doing. We're eating the frog, okay? And then you can eat the worm later, I guess, whatever. That's for the weekend. So that's what we're doing is we're setting this up. Now, this is the part that actually gets a little confusing for me, which is we have to make this a physics object, okay? And I think it's also interesting to point out, like, if you needed to do multiple punches or multiple different animations and you wanted to trigger one with your left click, all you have to do is go back and change, like, make another one of these, right? Like, you can wire dozens of different animations to this, right? So, what we're really needing to do now is try to make this interact with something for physics reasons, right? And weirdly, this has kind of changed since I made these videos. So I'll try this and see. I'm just going to drag a box out here. Not geometry. I want to use let's go to this geometry right here. I'll choose a mesh. So maybe I'll use this this 1 meter cube, right? And I'll just drag this in here. I'm going to pull it up, and you'll see it should snap to the grid to where it's kind of equal there, right? All of the shortcut keys, or a lot of the shortcut keys, will work in from Maya. So R will set me to scale. I'm going to make this a little thinner, a little taller, move it up until it kind of aligns again. And I believe all I have to do now is click Simulate Physics. Let's see what that does. If I do that and I walk over here, so now it kind of works. Except for our broker thing. Let's go back to my, why did that break? Third person blueprint. Compile, save. I don't know why that would do that. Play again. Huh. So she can still bump into things. Okay, why is that?
Changing with your dodge.
Huh?
Your hitbox isn't changing with your dodge.
Yeah. I know how to fix that. What I can't figure out is why her run isn't working anymore. Animation. Let's try file. Save all. Okay, that should be working. Compile, save. Let me go back in here to this mesh and make sure I didn't disconnect this. CF Anim Blueprint C. Why is it? No, let's just click that. Yeah, that makes sense. Compile, save. Why do I have a feeling that if I just closed this and reopened it, it would work? But let's see what happens if I took that out of there. That was working a minute ago. Let's try this. File, save all, close all that down. Let's open it back up again and see if this fixes it. Because we're really close. Reflection captures need to be rebuilt. Build reflection capture. Sure, whatever. None of this should be messing up. I don't know what's happening there. CF blend space. So that's working. Let me go look really quickly at my speed. CF blend space. It's set to none. Why is that? Let's try this. Speed. Drag that over here. Let's do set speed. No, sorry. Compile, save. That may have needed to be a set instead of a get. All right. So the last thing I'm going to do, just to kind of work with this a little bit, I think I need to figure out why that stopped working, but I'll figure that out. I'm going to go back into my my character's mesh though, because I do want that physics asset to still collide. So if I go to mesh and I select, I think I can select her hand and do enable per poly collision maybe. I'll do it with the other one as well.
Did you have to familiarize yourself with this kind of stuff when you work on the SIG file?
Different things, but okay, let's see if that actually works though. I'm going to create an object in here. But yeah, there's a lot of these little things, and some of it is like, there's a chance, probably not a good one, but there's a chance that this error is not my fault. It's a, it's a problem with it. But more than likely, yeah, it's probably actually my fault. So let's try that. Save current, play, and let's see if now she can punch that. Nope. Okay, I think there's a way of making that happen too. I may have to just pick that part up after class here. Huh? Oh, yeah. That might be right. Let's see if that worked. Good point. Simulate physics. Also say simulation generation. I don't think I need that. Let's do file, save all. And now let's see if it works. Because it's interesting. Nope. I may be able to do it under the mesh itself. So yeah, under this mesh inherited, if I choose simulate physics on that, compile, save, that might be the way of doing it. That way, right now what's happening is her capsule is bumping into it and causing it to fall over. I want her fist to also do that. Collision enabled is incompatible. All right, let's try that one more time. Mesh. Is that it? So if this isn't encouraging you to someday want to be a teacher, I don't know what will. I will tinker with this. I do think that there's something in here in the actor under this mesh that I need to turn on to make it collide with. I thought it was just simulate physics, but apparently there's another thing that I have to make it collide with. So, physics generate event hit event fires. Maybe I have to have both of those on. Okay, I'll keep messing around with this. There is something in here though that you would just make this characters mesh collide. I thought it would have been here. Enable per poly physics, but maybe not. And it's just going to be that there's another way we can do it, which is to hide, and this is what I do in the video when this is sort of the easier way of doing it. You can actually create a sphere and put that in our character as well, and just make it invisible, and hook that to her wrist joint, and then anytime she punches, that sphere collides with it. But you should be able to actually just make the mesh collide now. I just need to go back and figure out which one that is again. So, all right, I know there was a lot of stuff, there's a lot of little errors, and for some reason she's not running again. So I'll work on fixing that. Sometimes it's just you have to recreate those nodes and make them work. It's weird because it was working, right? Like she was working and then it stopped working, and then I was like, I wonder why that stopped working. Wait.
Sometimes you just have to talk out loud and figure it out.
Crap. I thought maybe I'd fixed it when I unchecked this enable per. Yeah. So I think I've actually just clicked something that I didn't need to click on it. Maybe it's when I selected these joints and made them. So I'll figure that part out. I turned something off. Otherwise, it was working. I think I just accidentally turned something on in physics that messed it up. And I'll figure out sort of the details to show you how to make that punch work. Otherwise, I would say try to get as close to this as you can. That way the questions you come in with on Thursday will be appropriate. So, speaking of Thursday, class starts at 11, right? 11:15, right? How do you feel about starting class at 12? Cool with that? Okay. I have a meeting that's optional, but I would like to be there for it because there's some stuff I need to discuss with some people. And the only time that we can schedule that, I think, is 11 on Thursday. So you all still have a room. Come on in here. I'll meet you here at about 12. That'll give you a little bit of time to pick up some of these pieces from the little mistakes happening here. If you already got yours done, that's awesome. As you noticed, it took me 3 hours to teach it, so you probably shouldn't bank on that 1 hour being enough time for you to get it all ready to go. What I'm going to pick up from when I come in is I'll fix this little physics thing to show you how to make the fist work again. And if I figure that out really quickly, I may just send out an email showing you. And the other thing is, from there, we're going to just start talking about polishing up these different animations. So most of what I'm going to be going over next class period, animating an idle and animating a run cycle. Okay. I will say I tossed this out as a run. If you decide you would rather do a jog or a walk or whatever, that's completely up to you, because some of the things we can change in this is stuff like the jump height. How high is your character jumping? And so I'll kind of show you that really briefly in this last 5 minutes here. Under this blueprint for this third-person character, if I select, I think it's the capsule component, is it, or is it the third-person character? Yeah, I think it's this. This is where, well, character movement. Sorry, it's this one down here at the bottom. This is where we can set a lot of stuff, like how high the character can jump. So right now, the speed for the jump is 600. This is flying, I'm sorry. There should be a jump one in here. So there's our walk speed, which is 600. So let's change that to something crazy just so you can see the difference. 1200. And you'll also see, you should see a jump height. Anybody see that? Custom movement, ground friction, walk speed. There we go. Jump Z velocity. So that's how hard he's going to jump off the ground. Let's change that to something crazy too. Hit compile, save, close this. And you can change this now. So now when my character runs, she runs really fast, right? And so we can adjust this to make it fit our run speed, or we can adjust our run speed to make it fit this character. The other thing is how high she can jump. So now she can jump much higher, right? These are mechanics that you can control. You'll also notice that there's a couple of others in there, like crouch. Was it Amy? Did you do the crouch animation? There's an ability to switch between walking and running, depending on how long your character is going. So there's a lot of little things in there that we can control with this. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to get these set up to where we like how it plays, and then make our animations match those. Like that's ideally how that would work. Whenever I get an assignment from a project, they say your character's run speed is 1200. And what that means is the character is moving 1200 units per second, right? And so we can go back into Unreal, or go back into Maya and make that match. So, all right, told you it was going to be a long day. I got to do it again, like in like 5 minutes. So you all get to go home and process, or go to wherever you're going next. So I'm going to go ahead and dismiss you from here. I'll pick this back up on Thursday at noon, right? Because I'm going to be a little bit late.
So I was going to ask you about the default moves and then the shell. I mean, I've been paying attention, but I'm also trying to figure this out.
Go back to your animations. And so, copy that default and plug it back to actually, I think it's the character. Now if they compile, we may get all those errors, but that's what we're doing.
Hey, Hershey, will you go to the submissions one?
Yes.
I understand why you can't. That's one clean it off.
There you go. Okay.
Under project one, if you want to take this progress text, Haven's dragon progress text,
That one?
the one above it, just delete that one. And as I put that one with the date on it, that's fine.
Gotcha.
With an updated video, where I'm starting the jump, and that's tough.
Is that what this one is right here?
That's the link to my sync sketch, yeah, where I've got no. Well, that's an older movie.
Is that the old one though?
That's the movie, the one above it is the text. That's the link. In the revisions, there's a newer movie.
All right, cool. Awesome. Yeah,
So
I'm
there's
excited
one
to see
as of
this.
today.
Yeah, I got through all of the grading for the
If you open up that.
principles of this one here.
Yeah, now try the 07, Art Dragon 07 movie.
Oh, cool.
I gotta add a couple more seconds and still spline it. And, you
Yeah.
know, the spacing's a little off, and right about here I had to mess with the tail of the head. Just got the wings out of the way,
Yeah.
so I could get that jump.
Yeah, good thing that's.
It's quite challenging to
That's
get,
looking cool.
but trying to compress and stretch the rig. So
Yeah,
now
that's
I'm
cool.
getting just off the ground. It's getting there.
Actually, I think I may have just recorded that too, by the way. That's what I'm doing. But yeah, no, I like that. That's